Hi people, welcome to the Run Testers, and in this video we are putting two big stack matte cushion trainers up against each other. We have the new Brooks Ghost Matte and the ever popular New Balance 1080 V13. Now these are both billed as good do-it-all daily trainers with a tilt towards the plush and cushion. So which one is best? Well, we've clocked the miles to find out, so watch on for our Brooks Ghost Max versus New Balance 1080 V13 head to head. Let's start with some quick comparison details then. When it comes to stack height, these two shoes are very similar. The New Balance 1080 V13 has 38 mils in the heel, 32 mils in the forefoot for a 6 mil drop. The Ghost Max has 39 mils in the heel and 33 mils in the forefoot, also for a 6 mil drop. The Ghost Max is the heavier shoe at 10.3 ounces or 293 grams in our UK men's 8.5 test shoes. The 1080 V13 comes in at 9.2 ounces or 260 grams. Price wise, the New Balance is a chunk pricier. It's £160 in the UK, $165 in the US, whilst the Ghost Max are £140 in the UK and $150 in the US. Right, moving on to a quick shoe whip round then. Looking at these shoes, you instantly get the sense of the similarities. But let's start with the midsoles. You've got similarly big stacks here. The New Balance 1080 uses a lighter and softer Fresh Foam X midsole foam across the whole foot. In its big stack, the Ghost Max features DNA Loft Foam V2. Both shoes balance that stack with broad, wide cushion platforms to run off. They also both use rockers to smooth transitions. The 1080 also has some extra stiffness in the forefoot to help you snap through each step. The 1080 heel has a bigger heel protrusion with a more aggressive curve sweep out to the back. Up top, both shoes have engineered mesh uppers. The 1080 have a shade more stretch and flex, but both shoes have a really high padded heel collars and tongues. The New Balance tongue is gusseted, the Ghost Max is traditional. There are very rigid heel counters in both shoes as well. The Ghost Max also has this external clip overlay here that reinforces that support even more. Lacing on both shoes is pretty standard. If anything, the Ghost Max laces come in a little bit closer together across the top of the midfoot. Now if you flip them over, you will see that the Ghost Max outsole has a more liberal covering of quite thick rubber, while the New Balance endurance rubber on the 1080 here is a bit more strategically placed. There's also flex groove design here that's supposed to work with the metatarsals of your feet.
So the fit for me in these two shoes, I'm size 8 in the UK, these are both size 8s in the UK. I would definitely stay to my size in both of these shoes. They're very similar in how they feel. There is plenty of room in the forefoot, there's lots of wiggle room, they're not too narrow. I have a pretty average size foot, and I do find I've got extra room in both of these shoes. The uppers are quite similar in the way that they're built, so they're quite comfortable, they're quite plush, and I had no issues at all. There's probably a little bit more room in the forefoot between the toe and the end of the shoe in the 1080 V13 than there is in the Brooks Ghost Max. But both of them, there's plenty of room, so I'd definitely stay to my size in these shoes.
So I've had no problems at all with the fit of either shoe. I'm a UK 9 and these are both UK 9 with Brooks, that's a US 10, and the New Balance is a US 9.5. Sometimes New Balance shoes come up a bit tight as a result and it's not quite as roomy as the Brooks, but I've got plenty of room in the toe box of both shoes, good hold around the midfoot and heel, so yeah, no concerns at all with the fit in my normal running shoe size.
So in terms of fit, I've had both these shoes in a UK size 8, and that's typically the size I would go for in the New Balance and in Brooks shoes in general. What I would say is I've had absolutely no problems in terms of fit in these shoes. I would say the Brooks Ghost Max is the more narrow of the two, and you can definitely kind of see that head to head, that the New Balance shoe does kind of open up a little bit more, does feel a little bit wider, more naturally, more spacious, particularly up front in the toes compared to the Brooks Ghost Max. But in terms of other areas, I think you're getting a similar level of padding. The tongues are very similar as well, very traditional kind of tongues as well. You're getting traditional lacing on the New Balance 1080 V13, where the Brooks Ghost Max have these kind of spongier laces, which I think you need to kind of really pull in and tug in a little bit more on the kind of tongue to really make sure you get a good lockdown. But ultimately, the fit has been fine for me in my size. As I said, I think the Brooks Ghost Max is a touch more narrow fitting in terms of the standard version. Obviously, there's an extra width option in the Ghost Max as well, whereas the New Balance 1080 V13 naturally feels like the more spacious, more accommodating of the two shoes.
Now when it came to fit, I ran in my regular running shoe 8.5 in both these shoes, and I found the fit spot on, true to size in both. There's good step-in comfort both these shoes. The New Balance has good heel hold, decent lace lockdown across the midfoot, and a padded tongue that helps avoid lace pinch. There's ample room in the toe box for both length and across the top of the toe. The Ghost Max fit well, true to size for me as well. The fit is also quite snug. It's hugging rather than roomy, particularly in the toe box around the little pinkies. but there's enough room and flex here in the uppers across the top to avoid it getting restrictive. I got good lockdown and heel hold, and overall I'd say that the New Balance though fits a shade more cocoon-like and holds marginally better in the heel and across the midfoot than the Ghost Max.
So the run test in these shoes is very easy. It's chalk and cheese, basically. The Brooks Ghost Mask, even though it's a max cushion shoe, it doesn't feel like a max cushion shoe. It's that midsole is very, very firm. It doesn't feel bouncy. It doesn't feel soft. It does have a nicer rocking action, I think, than the 1080 V13, purely because it's a bit more rigid and sort of moves your foot into position, which the 1080 V13 doesn't do. And really it's just sort of a solid, it's almost like, it feels a bit like a stability shoe for me. It's like very solid, supportive, holds your foot in place, but there's just no benefit to that max cushioning for me. I mean, it might work if you were a heavier runner and you wanted more a denser midsole foam, but really for me, I'm just not getting any sort of feelings from that. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Some people may want that, but I think if it comes down to max cushioning and you're looking at a max cushion shoe, you probably want a shoe that feels like it's cushioned, and I don't think the Ghost Max does that. New Balance 1080 V13 is full on softness, and the new version is really ramped up the softness and changed the midsole foam from the V12, which is a really good thing for someone like me because it just feels so enjoyable to run in now. Easy runs, long runs, recovery runs, just feels great. It's not a fast shoe by any stretch of the imagination. That softness does sink you in a bit. You don't get a lot of bounce back from it, but if you're on easy runs, things like that, it's just such a comfortable shoe to wear. I've really been enjoying this. I'm a massive fan, as you probably know if you watch the channel, of the New Balance More V4. I think this is starting to overtake it a bit now. Just really love picking this shoe up for runs. I've probably done about 100k in this now, and it's becoming my go-to daily trainer, really. It's just very enjoyable, very comfortable to wear in every way, really. I've not really got any downsides to this shoe, which is a big plus point because I really didn't like the V11 and the V12. The Brooks Ghost Max, I don't mind it. It's fine when I'm running in it. It definitely feels a little bit more versatile for me than the 1080 V13, purely because of that firmer midsole. I did a fartlek session in this yesterday, and it was like 45-second reps as part of a longer run at 3-minute 50 kilometers pace. And it felt quite good at that, and surprisingly for a max cushion shoe. I definitely wouldn't want to do that in this shoe. So it did feel like there's a little bit more to it, just because it's a bit more responsive because of that harder midsole foam. Definitely wouldn't run long distances in this shoe faster. It's just a bit of a bulky shoe. And to be honest, I didn't really get a lot from it. I think it's fine. I think it's stable, and I think if that's what you want from a shoe, I think it's better than the Ghost 15. But again, it's not really an excelling cushion shoe. I think it's far better cushion shoes out there. So yeah, I think they're very, very different, and it's probably going to make it very easy for me to do a verdict.
So I've logged over 50k on both of these shoes lately and have really enjoyed them as max cushion shoes that I would personally only really use for easy runs, but I have put them to the test with some slightly faster stuff as well as long runs to see how they cope with that. They're both good shoes, but with quite different rides, I'd say. The Brooks is the slightly firmer shoe. It's still very soft, but it's a slightly firmer shoe with a nice rocker that you really notice on the run. It does move you through your foot stike really smoothly, and that works kind of at easy or slightly steadier paces. I do think it provides a very nice, broad, stable platform that's comfortable, resilient, gives you a little bit of bounce, but not a lot. It's not very bouncy foam, this, but you do get that rocker, and it's very present for outrun, so it does make ticking off miles feel very easy in the shoe. The Fresh Foam 1080 has a softer foam. It's a squishier foam. It's probably a little bit more exciting when you first step into shoes. Like, it is a very nice feeling. It's very comfortable for short, easy recovery runs in particular. It's got the edge on the Brooks for that, I'd say, but over the course of a longer run, I probably prefer the rockered feeling of the Brooks myself. It just is a little bit smoother. The 1080 was still good when I did a long run in it. It felt okay, but by the end, it's just probably slightly too soft for my taste, but lots of people will disagree on that. They will prefer the softness. When I ran in both shoes at the same time, again, that's all those kind of feelings about the shoes were confirmed from my full reviews. You've got that slightly softer feeling on the New Balance, slightly firmer, more rockered feeling from the Brooks. It's actually a bit of a rocker going on with the New Balance as well, but really I think it will come down to what your preference on ride feel is, because they both both do a really good job of hoovering up easy runs, long runs, that kind of thing. Neither is especially versatile. The New Balance is a bit lighter, but I think the Brooks has a bit more... that rocker and the firmer foam gives it a little bit more when you try and run a bit quicker in the shoe, I think. I think you get a bit mushy in the 1080 if you're trying to do that. Neither are shoes I'd use for a lot of all-out training or anything like that, but if you're going to use them as daily trainers, I'd say they're probably about par for the runs you can do in them. I probably prefer picking up the pace in the Brooks myself, just because I do like a rockered shoe and that slightly firmer foam. But the 1080 is a bit lighter, and that obviously is a big factor as well if you are going to try and run slightly faster speeds in them. On stability, I think the Brooks is slightly better, probably just because it's got that really wide base, slightly firmer foam, and it's got a really good outsole as well. The 1080 outsole has been okay for me, running here on wet, leaf-covered pavements in the UK, but I think the Ghost Max is the slightly more stable shoe. But overall, there's not a huge difference on things like versatility, stability and all that. I think it really just does come down to the different ride feels here as to what would be the better shoe for you.
So in terms of run test, I have done a fair amount more in the New Balance 1080 V13 compared to the Brooks Ghost Max, and that's just because this is one of my favourite shoes and I've spent a lot of time in it post our review on the channel. And I would say in terms of the experience of these shoes, I think there are definite similarities. I would say in terms of the midsole you're getting here on the New Balance shoe, it's definitely softer and more plush, a bit more in the kind of category of something like the Gel Nimbus 25 in terms of that plushness. So if that's something that you kind of value, then that's kind of what you're getting here on the 1080 V13. On the Brooks Ghost Max, you're definitely getting something a touch firmer in comparison. It's not super firm, but it means that obviously you're getting something that feels a little bit more protective, I would say. Kind of, you know, if you prefer that kind of slightly firmer feeling midsole, then that's definitely, you're getting plenty of it here in terms of cushioning. It's spread across a very stable base as well too. I would say the same about the 1080 V13, very stable feeling shoes. Now, I think they both have kind of, you know, gentle kind of rocker feelings about them. I think maybe you're getting something a little bit more prominent on the Brooks Ghost Max, but I do think you get that there as well on the 1080 V13. And also you're getting a very light shoe here as well too. And I think while I still think it's a shoe that excels best when you're running comfortable kind of paces and you're kind of running very easy paces as well, there is a nice rocker feeling to get you smoothly through those transitions, where I think you get that here on the Brooks Ghost Max as well too. But that extra firmness maybe gives you something that gives you a bit more confidence to want to run a bit longer in this, and you maybe want that extra level of protection here that you're getting in the Brooks Ghost Max. But I do think while the midsoles are different in terms of the, you know, the general nature of them and how they feel and how plush and how, you know, slightly firmly it feels on the Brooks Ghost Max, I do think you've got those kind of rocker technologies that do make sure that, you know, they're quite, you know, enjoyable shoes to kind of run through and kind of run and log a lot of time in. I just think, you know, you're getting something a lot softer feeling underfoot on the New Balance 1080 V13. But for me, I think they are built for the same types of runs ultimately. Outsole wise, I think for me the Brooks Ghost Max definitely has a little bit more rubber on its outsole. They definitely do focus on the same kind of areas. You're getting a different design pattern here ultimately, but I do think there's more rubber on the Brooks Ghost Max outsole. Now grip wise have been absolutely fine for me. I've had no real issues. I have run in wetter conditions in both of these shoes. I'd say the Brooks Ghost Max has definitely just got a little bit more going about it in terms of that level of grip, but I've had no issues in terms of the traction on the New Balance 1080 V13. I just think if you wanted something with I think more rubber, probably going to give you a little bit more life and durability, I think you're probably going to get a little bit more from it on the Brooks Ghost Max. But yeah, all very similar, I would say, across the board in terms of the types of runs and my experiences of the shoes. But as I'll get into the verdict, I definitely think there's one that I would be picking over the other, and I'll explain why later.
So run test then. In testing, I've run around 50 kilometres in the New Balance 1080 V13, slightly less in the Brooks Ghost Max. That's been a mix of paces from slow pollards to faster marathon pace, and even a little bit beyond in some runs. I've done runs up to 90 minutes, and I've done some miles on road, some on light off-road river parks, paths, those kind of things. So the usual sweep of test miles. I've also done a mile with one shoe on each foot, and here is what I found. So I've just done the side-by-side mile with the Ghost Max on the left foot. I've got the 1080 on the right foot. And the remarkable thing, these are very similar shoes. This is almost as if Brooks has made a 1080, from the shape of the shoe, from the midsole geometry, from the way the uppers fit and the comfort and the heel collars, the way they hold. It's not far off putting on identical shoes. There are some differences, obviously, but overall you can see what the attempt is here from Brooks. They've tried to make a max cushion shoe that can, you know, basically get in that mix with the shoes like the Nimbus 25 and the 1080 V13, and I think they've achieved it actually overall. Big difference here on the run is that the Brooks Ghost Max, they're a touch firmer the 1080 v13 give you a little bit more bounce and spring, and it feels a little bit more like there's more volume and more bounce and more spring and more foam to the midfoot into the heel, and that does give you a little bit of extra bounce and spring. The Ghost Max, I think by comparison, just feel its margins, again, we always talk about margins here, but it's very, very small, but they do feel tuned slightly firmer, slightly duller. You're relying a little bit more, I think, on the rockering to do that work. The flip of that, though, is I think what you get in the kind of bounciness and the spring and the extra kind of liveliness from that foam, the Fresh Foam X and the 1080, you kind of lose a little bit in stability. So there is a bit more wobble, I find anyway, on the 1080 on the Ghost Max. I find the Ghost Max a little bit more stable. In terms of that wider platform as well, there's not a huge amount to choose here, I don't think, in how you feel with the precision in each of the steps. They're both giving you a big wide platform as well. Feels like the same amount of shoe is coming with you in each step. One thing I will say, I think overall the New Balance 1080 hug a little more snugly on the foot than the Ghost Max. I feel like my heel is held a little bit more firmly in place across the top of the midfoot. I've got a bit more lockdown than I have in the Ghost Max. I don't think the Ghost Max is particularly slippy and worrisome, but it's just a little bit more notable that you feel a bit more cocooned in the 1080. So if you like that sensation, that's a thing you're going to get here a little bit more with the 1080. Yeah, so for me, I'm not sure there's a huge amount to choose here. I think Brooks has done a great job with this shoe. One of the things I think you're going to have to make a choice out of these two shoes is whether you want something that's got slightly more cushioned and a bit more of a springy kind of bouncy ride, as opposed to something that comes up a little bit firmer tuned and relies a little bit more on the rockering and the immediacy and the response. If you like that kind of sensation, then I would go for the Ghost Max. I don't think you're going to be disappointed if you choose either of these two shoes, though. Now, these are both shoes I can use for runs up to marathon pace. I wouldn't choose them necessarily for anything faster, and I think they're at their best for the easier, slower miles, the kind of miles you're clocking for the joy of moving rather than fast Strava splits. Now, when I reviewed the New Balance 1080 v13, I said it offers everything that I look for in a plush, soft, max cushion shoe. You've got the big Fresh Foam X stack that delivers protection from the roads in spades, with nice smooth transitions, and it's just an incredibly easy shoe to roll along in. I feel the same about the Ghost Max, actually. It strikes a happy balance between cushioned and responsive, and I find that the glide roll rocker made for nice smooth transitions in the main, though it did so more on fresh legs when I was landing slightly more forefoot with better form. The other thing I noticed was the grip on the Ghost Max. I ran on wet, chopped up, sloppy river paths, and they were really reliable underfoot, and I'd say they're slightly ahead of the 1080 for that. I also think the more extensive rubber is going to make them more durable.
So my verdict on whether you should go for the Brooks Ghost Max or the New Balance 1080 v13. I think these are two very good shoes. This is one of my favourite shoes of the year, and the reason I like this is it feels like a step up from what we got in the Asics Gel Nimbus 25, where you've got this kind of lovely soft midsole foam, but you've also got a ride that I think makes you want to kind of run a little bit longer in it. Now, the Brooks Ghost Max, it is a much firmer feeling midsole or shoe in general in terms of the experience, but I think you get, like the New Balance 1080 v13, you get that kind of nice gentle rocker feeling. It's kind of really going to get you through the transitions from kind of heel to toe in the shoe, so you can kind of effortlessly kind of get through a good amount of time on your feet, and it will feel pretty consistent, pretty stable, and it just feels very reliable, but it definitely feels more, memorable than something like the Brooks Ghost. If I had to pick, I would still be going for the New Balance 1080 v13. I prefer the weight of this shoe. I think while you do get a softer midsole and you kind of, it really does offer you something really comfortable under your foot, I do think you get that kind of rocker feel that, does make sure it doesn't fall too flat when you are going out and running a little bit longer in it. I do think you get that on the Brooks Ghost Max as well, but I'm not absolutely in love with what we get here on the midsole foam. If it was just a touch softer, maybe a little bit springier, a bit more like we got on the Brooks Glycerin 20, then I think I would have a little bit more love for this, and it is the cheaper shoe as well. But I think if I had to pick, and I'd be picking these for the same types of runs, I would be going for the New Balance 1080 v13. Just edges it for me in terms of what you're getting in that kind of the midsole there, that Fresh Foam X, found that softer feel, but you're also getting a nice rocket in there as well to make sure it's an enjoyable shoe to run in as well as giving you something that's comfortable, protective as well too. So just about edges it for me, the New Balance 1080 v13 over the Brooks Ghost Max.
So my verdict on the shoes is I'd probably slightly prefer the ride feel of the Brooks Ghost Max myself. The fact it's a bit cheaper as well, I think will come into play if I was looking at both of them, because I'd use these shoes for easy runs, long runs. I prefer the way the Brooks feels on long runs, and it is a bit cheaper, so I'd get the Ghost Max myself. The 1080 has the softer foam, the lighter design. I think lots of people will really like that, especially if you're just looking for all-out protection for easy runs, a really comfortable shoe. You've got it here with the 1080, but then the Brooks is still a very comfortable shoe, I'd say, and then you get a little bit more from that firm platform that maybe will help with longevity, and in general I just like the feel of it. So I would get the Brooks Ghost Max myself, but I certainly have no problems recommending the 1080 to anyone who really loves a very, very soft ride and just loves that mushy feeling of foam underfoot. You get that with the shoe, and it's really nice and protective, but I find the slightly more resilient foam and the rocker in the Brooks is a little bit more suited to my taste in a big cushion shoe like this.
Verdict then, well, for that plush comfort cushion ride with a softer edge for easy miles, I think I prefer the New Balance. They're just a little bit lighter and a bit more agile. I get a bit more bounce and energy. However, Brooks has done a really good job here of creating a max cushion shoe, and the Ghost Max are 100% the kind of shoe I can happily use to eat long runs and cover easy low heart rate miles. They're slightly firmer, a bit less springy, and you rely more on the rocker in my style anyway. It's a marginally duller, less energetic ride overall, but for me there's not a huge amount to choose between these two shoes, and when you look at the Ghost Max price, £140 or $150 in the US, which is a chunk cheaper than close rivals, including the 1080 V13. It's definitely one to look at as an alternative if you don't mind a slightly heavier shoe with a slightly firmer, duller ride, or in fact you're on a tighter budget. You could definitely save yourself a few dollars and get a ride that's somewhat similar to the 1080 V13.
So the verdict for me in these two shoes, I'm going into the New Balance 1080 V13 all the way. It's soft, it's comfortable, it's just a joy to run in. It just sinks into the ground. It's not a bouncy shoe, but it's also not a sluggish shoe. It doesn't sink in and then leave you. You can still keep going quite comfortably. And I just pick it up all the time for my daily runs, easy runs, that sort of thing. I think it's just a really great update to the 1080 range, which I've never really been a fan of. Ghost Brooks Max, it's fine. I can use it. I've got max cushion shoes that I much prefer, things like New Balance More V4, even the Brooks Glycerin 20, the Triumph 21. They're all cushion shoes that just feel like they have something extra to them. They're not all necessarily soft shoes, they're maybe just a bouncy shoe, but they just do more. Whereas I think the Brooks Ghost Max is just a max cushion shoe if you're looking for solid, sturdy, that's it really. It's all you really get from it. Maybe a little bit of action from that slight rocker, but for me, it's the New Balance 1080 V13 all the way.
So there you have it. That is our multi-tester head-to-head between the Brooks Ghost Max and the New Balance 1080 V13. We hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions, hit us up in the comments below. If you've had the chance to run in both or either of these shoes, we'd love to hear your thoughts on them. Let us know how you got on. Don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that bell to hear about more content when it comes onto the channel. And now, if you want a full review of both of these shoes, those videos will be appearing on the channel just about now. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure to talk to you about these shoes. Thanks for watching, for spending time with us, and we hope to see you again soon. Happy running, people. Good luck with what you're trying to achieve out there.